Yeah, gouache is great stuff. You know, it took me a long time to come around to gouache. I think it's because when I was in school and I was kind of coming up learning to paint as an illustrator, that acrylic was the sort of preferred choice. And I suppose that acrylic, and that's what I always kind of teach my students, is that acrylic kind of gives you the most flexibility to do whatever you want. It's durable. You can layer it. You can paint it transparently, thickly, add medium to it. And if you're on deadline, it dries very fast. And I think that was always the draw for illustrators, right? Is that they needed a medium that would dry fast to be able to deliver. So acrylic really became popular, especially pop art sometime around the 60s. Acrylics got a lot better too. But if you're a painter and you're somebody who's working in oils, and I am now these days working more in oils than anything else, oils become difficult to obviously work faster timelines. So gouache is this wonderful place where you can be opaque and get that kind of brushwork that you would out of oils, although not the same, of course, but a similar effect. And it dries, and it's workable still if you go back in. But boy, is it sort of technique oriented. So if you're somebody that needs to have flexibility, sometimes gouache isn't so flexible because it is super sensitive to water. And if you get something just layered in there right and you hit it with a little bit of water, it can really do nasty things to it. So you have to be very process oriented with gouache. But my suggestion, if you're learning gouache and wanting to try it, is just to stay loose and paint with it maybe more like watercolor and work your way up to being more opaque with it as you move forward. And maybe if you're also starting to pick up some opaque mediums in the background, you might slowly learn to work with it a little bit more opaquely as you go. Gouache also makes a wonderful base for any dry medium over the top because it gets this kind of crispy, crunchy surface that's really supple. So, anybody out there else using gouache? It's good stuff. Also, the colors in gouache, the stuff that they tend to do, is really bright and rich, which I like because color's always been kind of a thing for me. So I like the bright colors, the sort of graphic kind of quality. I sometimes do fashion work, and I love the fashion colors and the brightness and the richness of them. So gouache works really great for fashion illustrations too. Just get this really almost very modern sense of color, bright, vibrant. Working a little bit of yellow. So I think eventually I'm gonna kind of blend this stuff as we get towards the horizon here. But for now, I'm just kind of laying in base coats. And I'll start to blend them a little bit more. And I'll probably have to start moving towards opaque. The permanency of the gouache is really getting tough to layer transparently. So you got to start moving to the opaque paint to get things to blend a little bit. So like you can see, I've got these kind of green. I had a blue undercoat, but I'm mixing sort of green into violet. And naturally, those are almost like a split complement relationship. So that's gonna mean I'm gonna get some brown in here, and that's okay because I think that would naturally happen even with light. But I may have to come back in opaquely if I want to take out the depth because I want that sky to have that lightness in it. So it's okay, it's just underpainting, and I'm staying relatively loose with the gouache at this moment. I'm not tight with it, and I'm not opaque with it. I'm staying very thin till I get what I want. Maybe I'll start layering in a little bit of white just to see how the blending of it works. In the end, I would say it's probably becomes a process of almost trans-opaque versus straight opaque. So some parts will be transparent, especially background edges of the picture end up being more transparent, and then the thicker stuff, the more opaque, densely controlled color will be more towards the subject matter and the focus here. Drop back in a little bit of blue-green. I'm not working with my normal palette either here, so I'm actually kind of trying a little bit of the palette that's on this this set. I'm using the Caran d'Ache. I guess this is what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 colors, but it looks like mostly primaries, a couple of secondaries, and a few neutrals, browns and stuff. And it's got, of course, a white tube in here too. So I'm going to try and work back in a little bit of this blue. See if I get a little more blending going on here. Yeah, so I'm going to have to come back in now with a little bit of white just to get that to soften up. I'm going to put down a little bit of blue first so that as I add white to it, it'll pick up some of the blue underneath. I think in the end I want something a little bit more violet towards the top and a little bit more blue-green towards the bottom. So a little bit of the spectrum, I guess, happening back here.